Welcome back to the podcast, guys. It's episode number 79. We've got Coffey coming back to us. We're going to talk with her about why she doesn't spend too much time interacting on social media, just focus on her clients instead. We get a debate as to whether food addiction is a real thing and some elements around that. Is there such a thing as being too addicted to fitness? Can it happen? Is it dangerous? A conversation about think of yourself as a non-smoker or addicted person versus an ex-smoker. And the whole problem with equating thinner with happiness and how it's a little more complex than that. Stay tuned. It's a great one.
Shut up and sit down.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the podcast. Today we've got Coffey back with us. We're revisiting and further exploring her work, helping people through addiction, getting them involved with their better physical and emotional fitness. And so I guess the first thing we were curious about is what have you been up to lately, and how has your work evolved from where you started?
Well, hi fellas, thanks for having me back on. What have I been up to lately? The last several years has been about me fine-tuning how I support my clients online, mostly. So I've been doing mostly large group work with my subscribers, but I've also branched out into accountability coaching. So that's some remote one-on-one work, and that's been very satisfying and very enlightening. And other than that, I've been focused on traveling as much as possible and enjoying my time with my kids. My girls are now 6 and 7 years old, and they're pretty amazing.
So you haven't decided to start a coffee company like Jordan Scott, or we were talking with John Romanello just recently about people branching out of fitness directly, like John's work with Wellspring, and he's getting more into business coaching and writing and that sort of stuff. So no urges to just step in and create your own Coffey clothing line?
I have been asked to create all kinds of things, and no, I have not branched out. Although I do appreciate that having physical objects to sell is much easier than selling intellectual property or selling ideas. So I'm open to, if anyone has a really fabulous low cost like shoelace that they think I should throw my brand behind, I'm open to getting those emails.
like those things they send at work conferences, like little trinkets, like a laser pointer or like a holder or like a bottle cap opener. Like you could have a company like that.
Guido's making physical gestures with his hands at me.
And I made a physical gesture of a bottle opener. I put my finger through it, and you can see it, but that looks like something.
Because everybody else who's listening to this has no idea what he's doing. So when he does shit like this, I like to make fun of him. So, we never do this. So anyone who isn't used to us or kind of first time finding us, this voice is Andrew Coates, and then the other one is Guido. So Dean Guido. Well, Let's go here. I like this one because I love asking these kind of questions. So Kelly, a lot of our industry, our friends, our peers, our contemporaries, they are pretty active on social media. They talk amongst each other. Sometimes they're arguing. Sometimes it's nastier than arguing. But you actually aren't all that heavily engaged directly on your social media. You tend to stay out of that online space, comments and Facebook and whatnot. So where did that come from? Is that in part due to social media's own addictive properties, or is it just for a totally different reason?
That's a really good question. So I am really, really, really busy. I don't know how our peers and contemporaries ever find the time to engage in the arguments that they engage in online.
Not being busy.
Like, I certainly am witness to a lot of it, and it just doesn't seem like a strong use of my time. When I have maybe a free hour every day, I want to spend that hour cleaning my house, working out, or generating some content for my paid subscribers. I generate unique content for my clients every day, 365 days a year. So there's a lot that I'm doing that no one outside of that sort of little universe would see. But I don't see any benefit to participating in that stuff, which some people would call me crazy for, because that means less exposure and less people know me. But I'm okay with that.
Well, and that kind of leads me to like, how do you get so busy? Like in a world where everyone's pushing, like you gotta be pushing content, everyone's gonna see your shit, blah 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 blah. Like how have you built that? Essentially the old school way.
Well, I started my blog in 2014, and so that was before I had the course, before I'd created the course that I created, The Pleasure Principles, to help people get grounded in healthier habits who are programmed to self-destruct. Before I had that product, before I had that course, before I was supporting people who signed into that community, I had a lot more free time. And so I wrote blog posts once a week or once every 2 weeks. And for the year or so that I had a blog before I created my course, I was super engaged in that. And that generated a lot of the buzz that brought people into my community. But ever since my community has started, word of mouth has helped it to expand. So I'm busier and busier every day, just by virtue of the fact that I have a course that is really helping people, and I'm extremely involved in it. I am it. I am the content creator. I am the administrative director. I am the owner. I am the financial person. I am the marketing person. I'm everything, which some people would also say is crazy, but it enables me to control the quality of absolutely every aspect of my business. And part of my sort of obsessive, addictive personality finds that very, very satisfying. So I'm busy because I do good work. And that's pretty much the answer to that.
We're seeing a message now more constantly with it seems like somehow someone slipped in. John Romanello slipped it in last episode about like online business coaches, and funny enough, like John does business coaching at a very, very high level. He's been a guy who's been around a long time, but so you see all these little new coaches popping up on social media, and people who haven't really done a lot or demonstrated success to then all of a sudden be coaching others. But damn it,
which is terrifying, mind you.
It is really, really
terrifying.
Awful. But
right, isn't one of those old adages like those who can't do teach?
Yeah.
So yeah.
And as much as I feel like beating up on this stuff constantly is low hanging fruit, but a lot of their message is scaling your business, and I at the end of the day, like, I don't think a lot of people are capable of coming in and help replicating something like what you're doing, because what you're doing is very specific. It's very based on your personal experience. I think it'd be very hard to find someone else to bring into what you're doing that could replicate the quality of your work.
Well, I'm very much my product. My journey is my tools, the tools that I used to save my own life and bring myself to a healthy, comfortable weight and, let go of the vices that were killing me. The very specific things that I did in order to be able to do that are what I teach. So anyone who might come in, like, I'll never sell my business. Mm-hmm. Every time I speak to someone who's business minded, they say, well, have you set it up so that someday you can sell it off at a profit and relax? And I'm like, no, because no one, the way that people connect with the content is that they can see that I have benefited from it and they're connecting directly with me. This is not something that someone else could do, which means, I'll never sell it for $1 million and run to Bali, but that's okay because I love what I do. So
and that's a good message, even though, because like I think that a lot of, we're talking about business coaches, but like business advice in general is general, and certain things like this doesn't mean it's the right answer. Like, you should build your business this way because of this happening and this happening, but like, you like what you do, is that wrong? And it works because of that. Like, it works because you're doing it the opposite way. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. And truth be told, I've never once written a business plan. I didn't go into this imagining that it would be anything.
Yeah.
I just did the best job that I could answering the questions that people were asking me. And continuing to do that day in and day out for years, I've now got this amazing course and this amazing community that I'm, lucky enough to be at the helm of.
Have you ever thought about, I guess, taking some of that content or the creation and like setting it out to the bigger world? And what I mean by that is like social media, just for exposure, or does it like not matter? Because like that could be an answer too.
It occurs to me sometimes that I could probably have a YouTube channel. It's one of those things that my subscribers are like, why don't you do this for more people? Why don't you put this stuff out there for more people? And for better or worse, I'm not a business-minded person.
Yeah.
I'm a help-minded person. So if I'm going to put time and energy into something, I want it to be in service to the people who are ready to make a change.
Yeah.
I don't just sort of want to be screaming out into the void, hoping maybe somebody connects with what I say, which is what marketing feels like to me often.
Yeah.
So I have an automated webinar that I run all the time, which is how most people find out about my course and join my community. But other than that, I'm not generating fresh, videos every day, even though I probably could and maybe even should.
You should. It's working.
You should.
No, I said I don't know if you should. I think it's
There-
you're dealing with a specific community, and like you said, your message will get lost and almost watered down if you send it out. And like, not that that's a bad thing. Like that's marketing 101.
There are
But-
people, I think, though, that, and Kelly, you're definitely one of them. I imagine Mark Fisher immediately, who, if you got like a 10-minute YouTube video twice or three times a week of just a colorful animated persona that some of these people we're talking about have, that would be really fun to deal with. Can you imagine Mark just, hey friends?
But Mark's the same thing. Like no one knows where MFF outside. Like it's getting more well known. But even like Stronger You, like no one really knows. It's kind of like their own micro community, and I think that's a good thing because the people that are there are the people that want to be there.
This goes to something we've mentioned before, and I don't know, Kelly, if you caught on to this. There's some fitness Instagram influencer, and I hate the word influencer. When I see that sort of arise, I get nauseous. Some little blonde girl, Brittany Fitness or something, with 500,000 Instagram followers, has sort of hit the news because she was promoting her training and nutrition stuff, and then didn't deliver on most or any of it. She has no qualification. I know that Lane Norton is on the attack mode on her. But we're seeing this sort of stuff now.
Well, it seemed like she had so much success.
These people are way more famous than the people that are a lot of our friends and contacts.
Well, she put it out for the world, and they all wanted in. And she has like thousands of people wanting programs, and she couldn't deliver. But like that's a problem.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's somebody who's taking advantage of the opportunity to sell because there are so many people just on the edge of their seat waiting for a product. But you open the door and you say, come to me. You better have something waiting there for them when they arrive. You better have some high quality something. That I actually did read an article about her, and I can only imagine how stressed out she must feel right now.
Well, they're like, she did it on purpose. I'm like, I truthfully don't think she did it on purpose.
I don't think she did either. And I think this is something important. And I recently read a bunch of Brene Brown's books, which were just amazing recommendations. I think it was Mark Fisher who first recommended them to me. I think even when we see these people that we sort of identify as the, quote, bad guys, there's still a human, there's still a person behind there. And yeah, I think some of the stuff is very unethical. But I think it's a lot easier to put yourself in their shoes and imagine what's going on in their situation before we unilaterally condemn them as evil. It doesn't absolve this individual of the behavior. But I got to believe right now she is in one dirty, awful place emotionally. And
seriously.
And then, quite frankly, I think it's hard to turn around and look at it from that lens. Just to look at other people as humans. And this is a person who, I've said this before, I don't know, on air. This is someone who gets up every morning and thinks they're a good person. They love their mom loves them. And they don't go about their day thinking, how can I screw everyone? And citing Mark again, and Mark is the first person I've ever heard use this language, but he approaches the world looking at people with unconditional positive regard. And I love that phrase. And I think it's a good attitude to take it. Yeah, genuinely speaking, there are going to be some awful fuckers that you encounter as days go by. But the person who cut you off in traffic, and we tend to be very impersonal with other cars and drivers.
No, they're all assholes.
They're all assholes.
That's crossing the line. You fucking come. You're a bad person.
and that's the point, right? Like, no, they're not a bad person. That's someone's grandma.
No, she's done.
Evil grandma.
She's out. She's out of the circle.
Of course, it's cold and very snowy in Edmonton, and you'd think Edmonton drivers are used to this crap, but every time there's a snowfall, you drive anywhere, there's 5 or 6 vehicles off the road. And of course, this is Guido playing
all the evil people
Mario Kart with red shells, like anyone who cuts them off.
All the evil people come out. Bad intentions. Sorry, Kelly. Can we just talk about our bad drivers for the next hour? Like, that'd be cool.
By all means.
I'm sure we can come up with an hour's worth of content.
We have no F-bombs yet out of Kelly.
Yeah, what's going on?
You're the record holder. No one this will be probably episode 79 if we're counting right. No one has taken your crown for the most F-bombs ever.
Did someone tell you not to swear
That's
anymore?
fascinating. I think I don't know why I haven't cursed yet, but now that I know that I haven't and that I'm the record holder, I'm going to turn that on its ear and I'm not going to say one F-bomb, because if there's anything I'm good at, it's abstinence. Oh. Not from drugs and alcohol. See?
Fair enough.
And now swears. Let's actually turn this over to, like, I guess your background. We kind of talked about it a bit, but both personally and professionally deals with addictions, like we were alluding to. And we see some debate over food addiction. And if it's a real addiction, what's your take on this subject?
I want to answer that because food addiction is something that I love to talk about, but I also want to backtrack for a second and just talk about, just to wrap up the piece about why I'm not that active on social media.
Yeah.
And since Andrew brought up influencers, I really do get focused. I'm not someone who thrives on multitasking. Like, I throw myself into whatever it is that I'm doing with like reckless abandon, which is both a character flaw and a character asset, depending on what I'm throwing myself into. If I was concerned with my social media image, that would become all-consuming, much the way that I am sort of all-consumed now by delivering quality support to the people that I work with. If I was like, oh, I have to keep up my Instagram page, I have to make sure that I post a blog post twice a week, I have to make sure that my vlog goes out, I have to make sure, I know that the quality of my support would go down because I would become so laser focused on that. So that is how my addictive tendencies influence my lack of social media presence, right? So I just wanted to mention that.
So basically, you have a job.
Sorry?
You have a job and you're good at it and you like it and you don't have time for that shit.
I do.
Yeah.
And, I would love to be able to do both, because surely if I was more active on social media, it would just bring more clients into the fold that I would, be able to support. But there is only one of me. So, it's probably fine the way that it is. But about food addiction, what can I tell you about food addiction?
Yeah. Kind of, I guess this idea, like we talk about people arguing on the internet, but I think there was like a good month span where everyone was like, food addiction's a thing. And then the other people will be like, it's scientific, it's not fucking real. And then they just hammered at it. But like, what's your take on, I guess, just the idea around what it is and if it's real and what people can do about it or not do about it?
I do not believe that food addiction is the same as opiate addiction or alcohol addiction. Because I am someone who is afflicted by all three. Mm-hmm. So I can appreciate the differences in how the body reacts, how the mind reacts, and the similarities. There are so many similarities that I think if we're trying to really, I think that using the term food addiction is helpful to be able to have an intelligent conversation about the phenomena of not being able to stop eating compulsively, especially if it is food specific or macro specific or flavor specific. Like, there are a lot of people who cannot stop or feel as though they cannot stop eating fast food because it's that perfect marriage of sweet and salty and fatty. And it lights up all of the lights in the whole brain, same as cocaine.
Mhm.
And that's true. And that level of like gross satisfaction that comes when all of that stuff first hits the tongue, it's very much like a drug-like experience. And being away from it is very much like a withdrawal experience. It's not identical, but it's similar enough that I think that calling it food addiction is a perfectly valid way to discuss the problem. I also I know that there are huge sections of people, huge populations of people who can only take control of what they eat and how they eat if they first abstain from certain foods or behaviors. And abstinence is the cure for addiction, or if not the cure, is the antidote, not the antidote. What word am I looking for, boys?
I can't say those words.
It sounds like, abstinence is the end state that you're seeking for sure, but I know you're looking for
those are hard words. I can't say antecedent. What's the evidence one? The personal evidence. Antidotal. I can't fucking use that word either. Anecdote. Like, that's the one word I can't say, and like I can't get in discussions with people. I just say n equals 1 because I can't say anecdote.
Okay.
She can't say it either. She can't say and whatever the one word. Sorry.
That word. It's a good thing we're cute, Guido,
yes.
or else we'd be screwed.
Yeah.
So if abstinence works to help someone feel as though they are in control with their relationship to certain foods or ways of eating, then addiction is a reasonable, diagnosis.
Yeah.
Is that yes?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that's the word I was looking for. Because the cure fits the cure works for the diagnosis.
Yes.
Abstinence works for addiction. If someone is struggling to get their weight under control or struggling to eat in ways they feel good about, and abstaining from certain things helps them, I think that's wonderful, and I think that calling it an addiction is totally valid.
You just used an important word there. I just lost it. I get it. The diagnose. There we go. Diagnose.
Diagnosis.
So I suppose that probably raises a valid point that probably your average trader who has some nutrition knowledge, but certainly doesn't have any like advanced credentials in nutrition, probably shouldn't be telling people, hey, you have a food addiction. I think it's a safe enough thing to talk about in general, but I'm just of the opinion that you don't diagnose people with shit that you're not qualified to diagnose. And that goes for injuries and pain, and it also goes for psychological stuff too.
Absolutely. And you cannot, only an alcoholic can say that they're an alcoholic. An outside person cannot truly know that. Only a food addict can diagnose themselves as such. It's not for someone else to suggest.
Well, and like I like the idea of like the words are just gone today. The diagnosis or whatever, the abstinence is kind of how you would tell people to get away with it because it's a food addiction. The one shitty thing is it's just like alcohol being present is that our environment, especially like in modern society, is set up to like really fuck with people. Like they really have to abstain from it because it's everywhere. And like that's a really hard battle for some people.
It is.
Yeah.
It sure is. And it's totally doable with the right frame of mind and the right support. Alcohol was my reason for living for many, many years. And I've been sober now for many, many years, but I spent last week in Las Vegas, where absolutely everywhere, everything, everyone, every surface was basically covered in booze, and most of it was free and all of it was pretty, and there were these hot women walking around in tiny little skirts with these big trays. What can I get you? And at no point in my trip was I like, oh, that's a really good idea, or oh, I really wish I could, because I have embraced and accepted that I am an alcoholic, and that means that alcohol cannot cross my lips, or everything else that is good in my life will stop. And, if if someone who identifies as an addict gets the support that they need in order to be able to embrace abstinence, then it becomes a lot easier to continue to live healthfully. It's when people are constantly questioning whether that's a valid diagnosis that people get into trouble.
Mm-hmm.
Vegas, geez, I haven't been there in a few years. Went there 2 years in a row with the old company. Me and Dean Somerset and a bunch of other people walking around in Vegas. And yeah, you have those big slushy drinks with like 3 or 4 ounces of booze in them. That was me. Dean's a lightweight. He doesn't drink very much. I think he might have one drink at like the fitness summit, and then that's kind of it. He retires for the evening.
And then like every corner, someone's asking you to take a limo, and they got drugs for you and strippers and whatever you want.
And you have all these people who are like flicking cards of strippers to go to the strip pubs, the Spearmint and Rhino and all this other sort of stuff that's down there. But yeah, it's a different experience. If you've never been to Vegas, everybody should at least see it once.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Unless you're an addict.
If you're
then
and
wait
you're newly
until
trying
you're
to
sober and then go.
Yeah, if you're newly trying to abstain, don't go there.
If you are a gambling addict, no, bad idea. Well,
Oh yeah.
A lot of what we're going to talk about, it has to do with addictions and especially alcohol. And something that I noticed that goes really well to this conversation. So I grew up in Newfoundland. For anyone who doesn't know, I don't really have the accent. Every once in a while someone says, "Oh, I totally hear it." Well, I think you're crazy. But it seems like culturally alcohol consumption is fairly ubiquitous. And it got me to thinking about how in some cultures, and you hear about Germans drinking a lot, or I have a lot of East Indian clients, and they talk about how like in India they drink more than Germans. I don't know how that's, or Ireland, that's my heritage. How I think in some of those cultures the consumption of alcohol is so ubiquitous. And I wonder, does this actually very easily disguise alcoholism? And do you have a lot of people within there? And it might not just be a geographic or a culture along those lines. It could be a workplace culture. It could be a company and their culture, or an industry. Does this disguise a lot of alcoholism and people are functioning as true alcoholics? Or is this stuff fairly innocuous? And let's see. And then we'll go there first. What do you think about that?
I think what you're asking is, does the culture of, widely accepted binge drinking make it more difficult to diagnose alcoholism? Absolutely.
That was a great recap.
Way better than I said it.
I think that's what you just said. I'm not sure.
That's a big part of it, yes.
Yeah. I mean, we judge ourselves in context of the people that we surround ourselves with. So like when I was drinking, I made sure that my friends were all people who drank real hard, because the people that I might have hung out with who didn't drink a lot made me feel too self-conscious about my own alcohol consumption. So in that way, my addiction dictated my social scene. And if you're someone who drinks a lot, it makes sense that you're going to surround yourself with people who don't make you feel self-conscious about how much you're drinking. And, whether it's because you're Irish, or because you're blue collar, or because you're from Newfoundland, or because you're, a stay-at-home mom, there's a huge spike right now in alcoholism for stay-at-home moms, because they're bored out of their ooh, I almost did it, because they're bored out of their minds. And, they need some relief, and they want some relief. And social media has decided that it's really fun and funny to be like, oh, it's wine o'clock. Oh, I have 2 kids. That means that I'll be slamming a bottle of Zinfandel tonight or whatever.
What's that?
So
Zinfandel?
That has become more culturally accepted, alcoholism has risen for stay-at-home moms. So yes, absolutely. It makes it more difficult for people to accept that they have crossed that line into alcoholism, because there is so much consumption everywhere.
That reminds me of an old Simpsons episode. If anyone's the old Simpsons episodes are always way better, where Homer gets a job in a different city. I think it was in Colorado, and his boss in the nuclear plant, turns out he's a Bond villain, but he's a really nice Bond villain. Hank Scorpio is the name. So the house that they're living in, everything is like self-cleaning. So Marge is really bored, and she's complaining. She's like, I'm up to drinking a glass and a half of wine a day. Right? So she's really stressed out about that. Of course, it's not very much, but yeah. So that reminds me of that.
How do you, I guess in your experience, how do you wake people up to even know that it's a problem? Because like a lot of people will cover the fact that it's happening when it's happening because of all these things. And same thing with food addiction is that people don't even know it's happening. How do you wake them up and realize like, hey, shit's going a little downhill here?
Well, it's hard to do, but if you're if you're close to someone who's suffering from any kind of addiction, I think what's most important is to not protect them from the natural consequences of their decisions, to not protect them from the natural consequences of their actions. So if someone, it's letting them deal with the aftermath that enables people to finally sort of accept that they've gone to a place that they don't want to be and to wake up and to do something about it. Codependency is the desire to micromanage other people's emotional experiences to make sure that everybody stays as comfortable as possible. Mm-hmm. And so if you feel like you're, burning a lot of calories, making sure that the heavy drinker in your life is still getting to work and still feeling okay, or if you're burning a lot of calories, making sure that the addictive eater in your life doesn't feel self-conscious or doesn't feel, whatever it is, then reining in your tendency to do that and letting them deal with the shit that is the direct result of the decisions that they're making is probably the most caring decision that you can make.
I think this opens up a whole nother conversation too about, I think a lot of the language we've used is very centric on the individual who's dealing with the addiction, but the addictions cause a lot of problems for the people in their immediate lives, particularly family members. Do you actually work with anyone, or do you have any thoughts for anyone who is dealing with that? They're not themselves the person with the addiction, but they're so directly affected by it that it's fucking their lives up.
Mm-hmm. The best thing that anyone can do who has an addict in their lives is to set the best example that they can set, so that the person in their lives who is struggling can see what it looks like to make healthier choices, can see how much healthier and stable someone is who is prioritizing their own health. So, and that's really hard because the person who is in a relationship with the alcoholic wants to focus on and fix the alcoholic. But the best thing that they can do is focus on and fix themselves so that they can give the person that they love something to aspire to.
What about enabling this stuff? And I don't know if I can come up with a specific example, but you probably observed a fair bit of this, the people you dealt with, the people around them enabling behavior.
Well, we can just use a fitness example. Like we have nutrition coaches and shit, letting people kind of go off the tracks and be like kind of supporting them in that. Does that make sense?
Like letting them off the hook when they don't adhere to the program? Yeah,
because that would be basically enabling them, like not saying shit when you know the problem.
Yeah, it's harder when you're talking about a nutritionist and client relationship because they're not in each other's personal lives. When I think of enabling, I think of like a married couple where, maybe the wife drinks really hard and so she can't wake up until, noon or whatever. And so the husband takes over all of the responsibilities in the house so that she doesn't feel badly about sleeping in every day. That's enabling. That's being like, you're making really poor decisions and I'm going to clean up the mess that you're leaving in your wake so that you can continue to feel okay about making really poor decisions. Stopping enabling means not
doing the work.
Not doing the work for someone else, not taking over somebody else's responsibilities.
What would you say to someone who is afraid to stop enabling for fear of losing the relationship? Let's say, again, in a romantic relationship.
That's a perfectly valid fear.
Yeah.
And you have to sort of, ask yourself, are you willing to let things get worse so that they might get much, much better? Are you willing to take that gamble? Or would you rather continue to let this relationship play out exactly as it's playing out and get worse and worse and worse because that's the nature of addiction?
I like it. This is why we brought
I
you
like
on.
that we're keeping it light, you guys.
I know we're like going super deep. No, but I think honestly, like, even when we're talking generalities and like certain scenarios, but like it is like people will pick something out of it, because I'm sure there's someone listening that can see these things, whether it's alcoholism, whether it's overeating, whether it's drugs and gambling, whatever. But like there is somewhat of a formula at this point. Like maybe not everything's perfect, but there are things you can do, and there are outcomes to the things you do or don't do. Like if you don't do anything and you keep enabling, not probably, but it's not necessarily going to get better, and it's not necessarily going to get worse. But you got to take that own risk on yourself.
If you protect, oh no, you first, Kelly.
Well, I was going to say it's if you don't do anything, it is not going to get better, and it is probably going to get worse. And
they probably think the opposite. Like if I just keep enabling, they'll get better. And from your experience, that's probably not the truth.
That's not the truth.
Yeah,
because the nature of addiction is progressive, which is part of why it's very difficult for the medical community to define food addiction as an addiction, because it is not progressive in the same way that opiate addiction and alcohol addiction is progressive. It doesn't necessarily take more and more and more and more food, endlessly more in order to affect the same response.
No, it's a 10-year process. Like it's 2 pounds every Christmas, and that equals insulin resistant. You know what I mean? Like it takes too long to develop, and then you can't tell what the cause is. So they fucking hate it.
Depends on the person too. I mean, some people get very morbidly obese very quickly.
Yeah, and the system's crazy. Like the body.
That's its own consequence. But Kelly's right. It is a little bit different than dealing with cocaine, for example. Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, we've got more questions.
Did you want to ask the other one, or we kind of cover it?
I actually kind of I want to flip the order of these, so we'll go with here first. We had James Fell on not too long ago, and he's got a new book, Holy Shit Moment. It's actually a really, really good book. And so he describes how people who think of themselves as non-smokers versus ex-smokers are more successful in their efforts. So these are people who still used to smoke, but how they had less relapse when they actually now frame mentally that they were non-smokers versus ex-smokers. So, and of course, when we're used to alcoholics and alcoholism being very, very clear on the fact that they are alcoholics, they're recovered alcoholics, and that's a part of their identity to stay away from it. So those two things sound the opposite of each other. Do you feel there's an advantage? And do you think people think of themselves as non-drinkers versus recovering alcoholics could be advantageous? Or does it matter?
My experience has been that the more someone identifies as being in recovery from a thing, the more likely they are to continue to be able to abstain from that thing. Because to say that one is a non-drinker who has developed an addiction to alcohol feels disingenuous to me. Because you're at your core someone who desperately wants to drink as much as possible all the time. So to identify as a non-drinker it doesn't seem honest. But I can see how for some people just the language of I am a non-smoker, I am a non-drinker, I am a non-compulsive overeater, or whatever you want to, I can see how that could be helpful to some people. But that has not been my personal or observed experience.
I think I know this in terms of the way that James wrote the book. It's all in the way that people, their identity, what their identity is. So if your identity is that of a smoker, and an ex-smoker is still part of the identity of being a smoker, it can be more challenging, right? You're always still in that person. If your identity is that I am a non-smoker, then the idea of smoking a cigarette is disgusting or foreign or not a part of your thinking or consciousness. I suspect alcohol is probably a little different, but it goes into fitness. And of course, we've got, the next question coming up has to do with that, fitness and addiction. I think the most successful people and I've got a client who had a really massive transformation. I think it takes a major identity shift to think of yourself as a fit person versus the formerly non-fit person. Makes it a lot easier to not have to deal with decision fatigue and the traditional belief system that willpower is a finite resource. It sort of breaks that system entirely. And then your default decision making becomes a completely different pattern than your old decision making, where I've described it this way, to skip a workout in a day takes more emotional stress and strain on me than it is it's sort of the same as someone else trying to decide to go to the gym. We know those people who they try to pack their gym bag, they leave work, and then they actually have to build up the emotional energy to actually go off to the gym. For me, it's actually that stressful to actually miss a workout. I have to conscientiously decide that I am skipping a workout on that day. So I completely flip-flop that. And that's a part of my identity as someone who works out all the time. So I'll throw it back to you and see what you think about that.
It's interesting, what you started with, that you have a client who had a major transformation and now he thinks of himself as a fit person as opposed to a not formally unfit person. I kind of got stuck right there because I just stood here thinking, do I think of myself as a fit person at this point? I've been a personal trainer since 2007. I lost the bulk of my weight in 2005. I've gone through this huge transformation. I still don't know, despite all of these things that I do, I still don't really identify as a fit person. I still identify as someone who, if left to my own devices, would sort of default back into all of those unhealthy patterns. So, and it depends on the day what would take more effort, going to work out or not going to work out. It depends on how I have been treating myself and taking care of myself in every other way. If I have been making caring choices in the 24-hour period leading up to wanting to work out, then working out is a no-brainer and it takes zero effort and energy on my part. If I've been slacking, like on my sleep or on my nutrition, or even just in how I spend my time with my kids, then going to work out can feel like a giant pain in the butt. So it's an interesting thing to consider, how one identifies as relates to fitness.
I think it's probably different for different people. Different. I think there's some people who probably have to remain hypervigilant always against exactly what you described. They're always sort of lingering in the background. And I know that would require willpower and it can be very emotionally taxing at times. I do genuinely believe, because I am very much this, where, places I've been in the past versus where I am right now is I've had a major identity shift, and therefore maintaining those behaviors doesn't require willpower. Does that make sense?
You made it automatic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And, I think of people like, in the book, James mentions our friend Chuck Gross, who lost, like 200 pounds. Or I think Carter Good might be another really good example of a major transformation. And I still think everyone has to be a little bit on guard and slipping into old behaviors. But I do think that you can experience a major identity shift, and how you think about yourself can really take a lot of that like willpower fatigue, decision-making fatigue out of the equation. And I think it can become a lot easier. I suspect for some people with addiction, that can actually work extraordinarily well. I think there are probably other people where you just can't let your guard down, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's tie this into fitness professionals, since we're going like super not deep today. And none of us can pronounce any like smart words, so like this is just like
yeah, keep it simple.
Fitness, so because we're all fitness professionals, we're often examples of, in the industry, of extreme physical and lifestyle changes. Is there a risk to being too addicted to fitness and nutrition extremes?
Sure, of course. I've seen people completely lose their lives to not being able to rein in their exercise compulsions. Lose their relationships and lose their jobs because they attached so much of their self-worth and identity to, running 20 miles a day or whatever it was. I've certainly seen addicts transfer that tendency from food or drugs or alcohol or gambling onto fitness. That said, you know, there's an order in which things are likely to kill us, right? If we are sobering up from meth and we decide to replace that with, say, I don't know, speed walking, go to town. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, you may end up getting an overuse injury. You may end up, I don't know what, but not everything, not all addictions are created equal, and not every one of them is likely to land you in a premature grave. So if I'm working with someone who is, really doing something extreme, changing their lives, getting sober from something, and they want to grab exercise and run with it, I do not discourage that, because life is going to come in and things are going to happen that are going to temper that desire to go too far with exercise. And that's a very natural part of the process. Like, they start all guns blazing, and then they realize that, actually, they still need to go to work and they still need to sleep. And so things become more moderate by necessity. So yes, I think that it happens. I think that there are some potential dangers, and I think that those potential dangers are nothing compared to the dangers of the things that they replaced.
What are some signs to look for it? I'm not gonna say being dangerous, but like, we have fitness professionals listening, and even people who know people who do this. What are some of the signs of when shit goes a little too far in terms of fitness and nutrition? Like, when it can be a danger.
If there's chronic pain suddenly, obviously something is wrong with form or frequency or something. The body tells us what it needs. The body's job is to maintain homeostasis. So when you wake up in the morning, if everything hurts all the time, and it's not just DOMS, it's not just muscle soreness, if it's joints, if it's tendons, if it's whatever, then that's something that needs to be addressed and not allowed to continue. As far as nutrition goes, if someone is becoming so obsessed with what they eat that they're distracted from every other facet of their lives, that's also problematic and needs to be addressed.
I like it. You basically, she was telling me I should stop. Well, and I did stop squatting.
Bringing Tupperware containers of boiled chicken and broccoli to weddings. No.
You know what? It depends. That one fucking depends. If you literally just got on your shit, that might not be the worst. It's like going to Vegas when you just stop doing cocaine. It's like, probably, like, you can probably go, like, just don't do it.
I don't know if anyone actually does this kind of crap. You hear stories about it, but like, I've never been to a wedding where anyone whipped out their Tupperware out of like a 6-pack held out. I mean, stories about fitness competitors who are dieting for show, and I think it's just more of a part of the industry that's got this old school draconian, like, oh, you have to suffer sort of mentality, and the only option is chicken and tilapia 4 weeks out. This sort of bullshit.
If you're at a wedding and you bring only broccoli and chicken, like, I would argue that they're like, that's probably one of their 6 fucking meals. That's like 800 calories. They're fucking insane.
It would not be very difficult to calculate the calories you need and then eat something, whatever the fucking dinner is at the wedding, and be a normal human being.
Best tip, though, if you're going to have a wedding, like, always have pierogies. No one hates pierogies.
I don't like pierogies.
What? Kelly, do you like pierogies?
Don't like pierogies?
Yes,
Andrew?
that's fucking weird. Like, well, if you have all you can eat pierogies, the wedding's a hit.
Yeah, I might have 3 or 4. I hate gravy. It's kind of a running joke with some of my friends that I absolutely can't stand gravy.
Don't talk anymore.
I don't like hot dogs. They're disgusting. Ketchup is awful. Although ketchup chips are fantastic.
You hate literally all the highly palatable stuff. Which is like, you probably are bringing chicken to the wedding.
No.
But because he likes it, not because he's prepping for a show.
Ketchup was designed so that no one cannot like it.
It's disgusting.
What?
It is absolutely disgusting. Even the smell of it's just like yuck.
Whoa.
Like, that's so, Kelly, is that a sign
that Andrew is out of his mind? Yes.
Is there
that I don't even know him? Yes.
You don't like hot dogs, man?
No, they're disgusting.
Isn't that like all they eat in Newfoundland is like ketchup and hot dogs?
Well, we've said this before.
And fish?
Poutine, yuck. And we're Canadian up here. And the idea of like putting gravy on soggy fries and like melted cheese curds is like, that's looks like vomit.
I don't love gravy, but like, it tastes good. Oh, man. Oh, we learned something new about Andrew today, Kelly.
know he did.
He's one of those fitness professionals that takes things a little too extreme.
No, I
Can't
love
have a hot dog.
I love scotch, apple pie. I clobber apple pie. My clients have been bringing me lasagna lately, which is fantastic. So when they bring you food, it's wonderful.
What about macaroni?
It depends.
What the fuck? Let's push towards the end. Because I don't want to make fun. I didn't even make fun of Andrew's red hair today. I was like, he doesn't like ketchup because he's a redhead. Everyone made fun of him, so he hates everything that's red.
I like barbecue sauce.
It's not red. It's brown. I have like you like all the colors of the hair that you can't have.
I like apples.
Green apples only, though. People often think that just getting thinner equates to happiness. What goes into that discussion to help people address the other underlying sources of the unhappiness? Just to keep it simple.
This is pushing us toward the end, Guido?
Andrew basically wanted like the shotgun therapy session here, and so all of these are actually him. He's we want your expertise, Kelly.
So here's what I've learned in my many years of working with many people is thin feels so good. It feels so good, and it's so fun and amazing and novel and delightful for some period of time. Whether it's, depending on how long you've been larger than you're comfortable with, depending on your life circumstances, being like healthy and thin could, be a high that lasts 3 months or 6 months or even 3 years, but eventually that novelty wears off, and what you are left with is all of the demons that have been following you around in your head the whole while along, and the realization that being thin did not fix everything in your life, which is what people often imagine it's going to do. Being thin just means that you're thin. It doesn't mean you suddenly have a good marriage, doesn't suddenly mean you love your career, doesn't mean you like your neighborhood, it doesn't mean your kids aren't assholes. Oh, does that count? Does assholes count? Did I just break my streak? I didn't say the F word, so that's all.
You basically said your kids are assholes, which is basically saying the F word.
I disagree. I respectfully disagree. But what does lead to the happiness, the joy, the satisfaction that we think we're going to find by being thin is making caring choices consistently in all facets of life. Like, if you're doing that, you are going to wake up feeling awesome. If you're doing that, your body is going to arrive at the healthiest weight for you, whatever that happens to be. If you are making caring choices whenever you have a choice, you're going to enjoy being you in your life. And it doesn't really matter what you weigh, although odds are, if you're making caring choices, you're going to be in a healthy weight range. It doesn't matter what size you're wearing. It is all about how you choose to make decisions in the moment.
Something that you said early on got me thinking about this. I recently read this book, Sapiens. It was really popular in our industry. A lot of people keep talking about it. It's actually a pretty good book. But towards the very, very end, the author talks about this psychological makeup of humans and how we will go back to kind of a baseline of happiness, no matter what happens to us. The example used in the book is, let's say you get a man and a woman, and the man wins the lottery and the woman gets into a car accident and essentially loses the use of one of her legs. And if you went 6 to 12 months later and asked them about their amount of happiness, how happy they were, on average, you would find that they both were about the same, and they had both returned to their baseline of happiness after the initial exuberation of the good or the initial sadness and depression of the bad. And I've seen this pop up before, so I suspect that's also part of this, although obviously there's a hell of a lot more when you haven't addressed like underlying demons.
Was that the same example? Like the guy won the lottery and his wife lost her leg? Or those are two separate ones?
It was an example that he used in the book concurrently.
Oh, okay.
And I think it might have been a brother and sister, or maybe it was no, it wasn't a husband and wife. It was two people he used as example concurrently. Yes.
Mm-hmm. I believe that's true. The novelty of a positive or a negative experience can really move the needle on our own perception of our own joy. But it water finds its own level, like happiness finds its level again. And I don't know if it's because of our early childhood experiences or personality or some combination of the two or many factors. But yeah, everyone has kind of a baseline, sort of like your normal core temperature. Like everyone's is a little bit different, but yours is probably quite consistent. Your perceived happiness is probably quite consistent. And you can win a competition, you can lose 200 pounds. Eventually, once the novelty wears off, you'll probably feel the way you felt before that happened.
I think that's very much part of our biological, psychological makeup. I think part of that, the way he sort of explains it is that it's a motivator for a lot of our biological drives to reproduce, to live longer, that sort of stuff. If humans got too complacent and too happy, then you'd lose the drive to do all this other sort of shit. And then a lot of it's just a genetic component of different people have baseline personalities. And some people, as part of the personality, are default less happy, and other people are just more positive, brain chemistry, what have you. So that stuff definitely plays a role. But again, I still think that the most important part of all this is addressing, like you said, your personal demons. And if someone has any number of emotional issues wherever they arise from, losing the weight, it's going to have a benefit. I think it's a universally good thing for your health to if you're categorically like morbidly obese or in that general range, to lose the weight. But you're right, it is low hanging fruit. It's easy. And we have extremists who will argue that people are healthy at any size, and I don't think that's a conversation we want to go too far into.
It's the end, man. We're at the end. We can't open that fucking shit can of worms.
I think most,
because Kelly probably has something to say for that one.
I'll leave it here. I think that'll be next time. I think most reasonable people kind of know the difference of that, and then it just becomes again another piece of low hanging fruit for some people to be really nasty towards people who are obese. So let's not go there.
I think that it's hard to be, if you're someone that's empathetic, you're not going to tell people, like, you need to fucking fix your marriage and, like, your fucking relationship or shit. You don't start there. Like, unless you really know the person, they're not going to react badly. Like, the other stuff is a means to possibly them understanding the other shit. Because they got to wake up. Like, essentially, the food will get them to possibly wake up. Maybe. Or maybe not. That's why we have people like Kelly to kind of have this community. You know what I mean? And have your thing going on. Because I'm sure you've helped a lot of people.
That was a good wrap up, Guido. Yeah. That was a skillful podcasting moment you just had. I liked that.
I was trying to like pump your tires so like you still like us at the end.
I like
give you some hard questions. Before we go and talk about books, there's this one book that like Andrew hates. It's how to the subtle art of not... What is it?
Yeah, subtle art of not giving a...
Kelly,
the subtle art of not giving an F-bomb?
Fuck, I almost had you.
Oh,
come on, that was so transparent.
I know, I was gonna try to sneak it in. I didn't think I could do it. And I was like, I'm just gonna go for it because I don't think I can do it.
I'm glad you went for it. It's important to try.
I know. That's why I wasn't listening to your response. I was like trying to think of it.
So we've mentioned... What did we mention? We mentioned James Fell's holy shit moment. We mentioned subtle art, which is trash. We mentioned Sapiens. I Brene Brown early on. You got anything that you've read lately that you'd share with everyone to add to the discussion of reading?
Yeah, Stephen King's It. Oh,
really?
My God.
I haven't read that one.
So freaking good.
He's a
one
good
of the
writer.
Things that I shy away from is reading industry books. Because everything gets all muddy in my head. So when I read for pleasure, and when I read for pleasure, I like to read Stephen King.
Yeah, he's my. I haven't read all of his books, but like, I like a lot of his stuff. Like The Shining and like Mr. Sleep are like my two favorite books.
He's amazing. Talk about prolific.
really
I want to squeeze him so hard.
Don't do that, because he's rather like small and frail now after that. Well, it was a long time ago, but he had this. He was hit by a van on a rural Maine road and nearly died. And he spent some time in recovery from that one.
Someone hit Stephen King with a van?
Yeah.
So how bad would you feel?
I actually,
in general, you'd feel bad, but like if you hit Stephen King, like fuck.
Yeah. It's detailed in one of his books, actually. So I recently read a Stephen King book, but it's actually his book called On Writing. So it's a nonfiction piece, but actually does detail a lot of his early years and kind of how him and his wife, they basically had nothing and like just abject poverty. And then now later on in life, things have gone quite well for him. And the van accident was one of the things that he details. But it's actually a really good book if anyone is interested in learning more about writing. Going back to it, we've talked about this a few times. I tend to get caught up in a lot of like nonfiction books, but for fitness professionals, especially, or just anyone, I think it's actually a really good idea to read a more diverse array of stuff, including fiction, some classic literature. Just expands your horizons. You have more shit to talk about for fitness professionals. If all you're reading is research, and I think 4 or 5 times we've had a guest on who they didn't read anything else other than research, so they mentioned research in this section. I'm like, holy fuck. But if you're working with people all the time, I really hope you have something to talk with them about that is not the technicalities of fitness and nutrition. It's going to make you a hell of a lot more interesting, and it's going to make the experience more fun for them.
Absolutely.
You got to learn how to tell stories. Like, people love that shit. You know, and if you don't actually read stories, like, I don't know.
Hard to tell them.
It's hard to tell. It's hard to create a story. You don't know what a good story is. Like, you know? Okay. For anyone who's listening, Kelly has another podcast, so we talk about a lot of stuff. She swears a lot, and we have a lot of her backstory on that one. But can you remind everyone that's new and coming back where to find you online, since you're not online apparently?
So you can go to my website, strongcoffey.com. Coffee is Coffey, because my name is Kelly Coffey. Strong Coffee, get it? I'm so clever. And I'm Strong Coffee Personal Training on Facebook, Strong Coffee Gram on Instagram. And like I said, I don't post a whole hell of a lot, but when I do, it's pure gold.
I agree. I would agree with that. Like you post meaningful stuff. Like, it's not like a post every day, but when you do have stuff, you want people to, you have something to say.
And
I do have something to say.
I
don't just talk to talk.
No,
she stays out of the arguments. It's not like the current one is Mike Isertel is trying to bait Lyle McDonald into a live debate, because Lyle is pretty much just running his mouth at everybody who's important in the research side of stuff. So
I figured out social media, FYI. You don't get into the fights, but you like put GIFs or something where like the person who posted it will like it, and then you pick up on their feed. And so now the more posts you're just part of and you just talk shit to people, the more you're in. Okay. I figured it out. So if you ever want to not post things, just go and like something or just post like a emoji and you're good.
That sounds like a giant sinkhole of your own time to read all the comments.
Well, you don't read the comments. You read the thing and just think of something clever to say. Like, oh, like Mike, like Lyle would totally win. I think that's what I put. Like, Lyle would destroy you.
I think someone said that they wanted to see a Brazilian jiu-jitsu match between Lyle and Mike, and I would pay to see that.
I would pay to see that.
Yeah, just because I would pay to see like Lyle like maybe win, like, because it'd be so funny. It'd be so funny if like no one wants, like, everyone knows Mike's gonna win, but everyone wants to see him get choked out just because it'd be funny.
Well, we could see if we could talk Lyle into it and like have it like give the proceeds, people pay, and the proceeds go to some really great charity, and then get watch Mike toy with Lyle for probably about 3 rounds, and then strangle.
This is how it's gonna go. Like I can just picture it here. Like they start the thing, and then Lyle like literally doesn't know what to do, and pokes him in the eye and kicks him in the balls, and then everyone's just like, because he would like freak out and panic, and then everyone would see his true soul is that he's an eye poker and just like total. And then his whole career would be done. And like could you picture that though? Like that's what I would picture him doing, is like oh.
I haven't had the pleasure of meeting him or any direct social media interactions, nor do I care to. So There's so many great people who are putting out great information who are also really, really pleasant human beings that I'd rather devote my energy into. Well,
like
anyway,
Kelly.
Yeah, like Kelly. So,
Like me.
and Kelly, you're back at the Fitness Summit in May, correct? You're on.
I sure am.
Cool. Yeah, I've already booked my flight. I got to book my flight. I booked my registration and hotel room. So I will be there, try to bring some friends down, and I'm looking forward to that again. So listeners, if you are in the industry and you're looking to go to the granddaddy of all great fitness conference events, it'll be my third year in a row, and it really changed my career. First year I went there, I met a lot of really cool people. This podcast is not unrelated to having had that experience. We brought Guido last year, and that's changed his career. It could be one of the best things you ever did, just to get out and network with people. So, and you get to see Kelly speak, and she is wow. She stands basically on the same stage, not at the same time as Mark Fisher, and holds her own. And Mark Fisher is just a dynamic and enthralling human being to listen to.
True story.
Cool.
Basically just said, like, you're not as good as Mark, but, like, you're pretty good.
I did pick up on that. Thank you, Guido.
But you're not a trained actor. Like, you like, on a scale of, like, should your presentation be shittier? Like, it should be. He's a fucking, like,
I don't think that's what I said at
That's
all.
what you said for sure.
Kelly is good enough to almost
No,
share the same stage.
what I
as
said
Mark
was
Fisher
Kelly
Fitness.
holds her own, sharing a stage with someone.
Anytime you say hold your own, that means, like, you're gonna lose, but, like, you can hold your own.
But you're gonna fight. You're gonna go down fighting, girl.
I like, and I love Pete Dupuis. I actually think Pete is such an intelligent and fun
What, are you gonna
guy.
dog Pete
But-
too?
But poor Pete was making light of the fact that he had, I think the first year I was down there, that he had to follow Mark, right? And just Mark's dynamic flamboyance. And Pete is just a much more straightforward guy with great info.
We'll let Andrew at the end of every presentation give, like, a ranking to all the presenters.
Well,
Like,
How
oh, you
many
kind of
Mark
held your
Fishers
own.
Did they win?
there's some rankings that wouldn't go well last year, but they seem to have cleaned that up, and they have a great lineup this year. So we'll leave it at that. Kelly, thank you. It's always fun to talk to you. So I appreciate your time coming on here. And I always say this stuff. We don't pull people on this podcast by accident. If we got someone on here, there's someone we really like, and we think they're doing great things for everybody. So I do encourage you guys to go and follow Kelly. Just like the guests we've had on before. What she's doing is helping a lot of people in a dimension that a lot of our industry doesn't have any expertise in or knowledge, and yet it is something that addiction, a lot of people are dealing with it, people around you are dealing with it, and it's not necessarily easy to talk about. So some people are hiding it. So go look into that, especially if you're dealing with something you haven't really felt comfortable coming out into the public space about your own demons. This is a really, really good place to go. And if this is the first time you're finding this, through Kelly's feed, she's got a previous episode with us early on. It's really wonderful. And we've got a lot of other really great guests that we believe in too. So maybe you'll stick around and enjoy more.
She held her own.
Thank you so much for holding your own with us.
My pleasure, gentlemen. Thank you for having me on again.
Shut up and sit down.